Buddy, hi there. Thank you for being here today. I hope you all are having a good day so far. Hello, AK. Hello, Don't Feed the Bears. It's good to see you. Glad you all are here today. Hope you've been having a good weekend. It's been a good weekend. Thank you so much for asking. It's been a pretty busy week. I work in a jewelry store, so Valentine's, leading up to Valentine's, is pretty busy, but not too bad. I hope you all have likewise had an okay week. And if you celebrate Valentine's Day, if you do anything for that, I hope that you had a nice Valentine's. AK, yeah, definitely. I keep forgetting that tomorrow's a holiday because my brain was so wired to just get through Valentine's and all of the craziness with that that I kind of just my brain was like, phew. So, and of course, I wanted to prep for this live stream so we could have some fun today. And yesterday was not only Valentine's for me, but my army anniversary, so I was kind of distracted. We'll get started in just a few minutes, just to see, let people have some time to trickle in. I know my live stream time was technically 12 noon my time, but a lot of times I try and start the stream a little bit early, and I didn't really do that today. I just kind of jumped right in, so I'm going to wait a little bit. Thank you, Don't Feed the Bears. Yes, it's been 6 years. I'll have a slide for that will be kicking off. Today's topic is mostly going to be love yourself, but I do have that little slide to celebrate my anniversary, so we'll get there. But thank you very much. Oh, AK, that's awesome. Don't feed the bears. Yeah, honestly, I feel you there. Social media, I feel like for a lot of people, just getting away from social media is like the ultimate self love. Hi, Metaloop. It's good to see you. Hi, Bomac. Thank you very much. All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Just move through like the housekeeping and some stuff so we can jump into the rest of the stream today. And I know people tend to kind of trickle in and listen in the background while they're, driving or working or anything like that. So I'm sure more people will kind of come along as we go, but let's go ahead and get started. So First up, as always, is just my little housekeeping. My final Welcome Home BTS video for Yoongi is going to be coming very soon. I haven't committed to like the exact day that I want to release it quite yet, just because I know YouTube and its many joys of, you know, copyrights and things like that. So I haven't copyright tested it and things yet. So there might be some edits I still have to go back and make. We'll see. But my hope is that it's coming this week. So I'm hoping within the next few days that video will be up. And then that will be the end of the Welcome Home BTS series. And then I'll have other videos that I'll be working on as well. Also, right now, my plan for the next live stream is going to be Sunday, March 1st. And I am kind of open to suggestions. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, no, Sunday, March 1st. I had to check the calendar there for a second because I doubted myself. But so yeah, March 1st on that one. I'm open to suggestions on what you guys would like to see at that next live stream, because I know at that point we will be starting to get kind of close to it. Arirang will be coming out. I don't know if between now and then we'll get any more information about Arirang, like a track list or anything like that. But I know that kind of back at the end of 2025 when I was doing some of my streams related to the BTS universe, we talked about doing a whole other separate stream that was a little less information heavy and a little bit more theory heavy. And so I wasn't sure if you all still wanted to do something like that, or if we wanted to maybe put that on the back burner for now and focus either on just like have like a fun casual chat, you know, since that'll be getting down to the wire before the album, or anything else that you want to discuss before the album. So I'd love your thoughts and opinions on that. And if you're watching this live stream later when it goes up on the channel, or you're listening to it now and you can't comment, please feel free to comment in the comment section when it's up on the channel, because yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you'd like to see at that next live stream. Definitely before like probably the week or so before Arirang comes out. Actually that week, because it'll probably be Sunday, March 15th. I'm definitely going to do a pre-album stream where we can like really talk about our theories and what we expect. And then after the album comes out, we'll do like a post game of it and kind of talk about everything. But that'll definitely be as we get really close to the album. So okay, so Don't Feed the Bears says theories. We can definitely do theories. We can definitely have some fun with that, because I know both times that we've discussed the BU so far, we haven't gotten quite as theory heavy, because we've just been unpacking like the actual, here's what the media is and here's what it, you know, says and da-da-da. So we haven't really gotten to unpack what we ourselves think about it quite as much. We've done it a little bit. So that's definitely something that can be on the table. Ooh, AK. I like that idea. That sounds like I would love to put that notion in for maybe right before Arirang comes out, because that would be really interesting to do. Like, kind of, I will be getting near the end of the pre-promotional cycle, because of course there'll be promotion after the album's out, but that'd be kind of interesting, because we have had a lot of really interesting things that have been going on, kind of like Javine just said. Hi Javine, it's good to see you. And that's one of the promotions that we've been getting too, the roses for ARMY and the playlists that the members have just recently released, all based around that theme. And we were having some really interesting discussions about that on our Discord server, about the idea of, I think BTS and their music and their themes have like a very different slant on love songs than maybe like people would traditionally believe. And a lot of times I think BTS's definition of love is very broad. So, you know, that's been an interesting element that we've gotten recently for the promotion of Arirang. So I love that as well. Hello, Butterfly Young. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. All right. So, the main topic that I'm going to be focusing on today, as you probably know, is going to be the Love Yourself series. This is going to be, I've been calling it a deep dive, but it's going to be like a little less of a deep dive than some of my previous deep dives, like Wings, for instance, or Map of the Soul 7. It's going to be a little bit more of like kind of a freestyle talk. So we'll have fun with that. But yes, let's head to the next slide first, because thank you so much, Javine. Thank you for wishing me a happy Army anniversary, because yes, it's my Army anniversary. The date that I officially became Army, I always say that it's Valentine's Day of 2020. But it kind of, I consider the whole weekend kind of my Army anniversary, because that eventual feeling of being an Army, that came pretty late on the evening of the 14th, and so definitely into the 15th as well. So it's my Army anniversary weekend, 6 years with BTS. So I definitely wanted to just briefly celebrate that with all of you as well before we get into the Love Yourself things that I have planned for today. But it's my Army anniversary. Don't feed the bears. Yes, you're so right. The roses were such a sweet gesture, and there was a ton of roses. So I mean, that they really went all out with that, and they made such beautiful displays. And I really loved the idea of people being able to take those, and people of all kinds were taking those roses, and getting their pictures taken with the wall. It was really cute. Thank you, Butterfly Young. I'm really glad to be able to celebrate it with all of you. I was getting all nostalgic last night on Discord before I went to bed, so and yes, I know I used this background last week as well, but it was too perfect to not use it again for my little celebration screen with added some like confetti in the background. It's too perfect. I know I've kind of told bits and pieces of my Army story before on live streams and in videos and such, but, my anniversary always kind of makes me think about the journey, and like, it's kind of, it was a bit of a longer process, and it's always interesting. A lot of Army will say, BTS comes to you when you need them, and that's very true for me, and it's also very interesting because like I had known about BTS for a couple months before I actually like started watching their stuff. And the funny thing is I don't remember how I knew about them, because I just remember starting to see them on like magazines and, just like hear about them. But I don't even really know how that had like an origin point or why they jumped out at me. I just remember even before like I started consuming BTS content, thinking that it was really cool that this band that was not from the West was really popular and was like really taking over things. And like I was really, even though I sort of felt like, oh, that's not for me, like if I heard K-pop mentioned, I just thought like, oh, that's a fandom I'm not in, and kind of was believing the very exclusionary story of just like, oh, that's just for kids, you don't want to be part of that. I still like was really impressed by BTS. Like something about them was just jumping out at me. It was like I was being primed to find them and find their content. And then of all the things, it's kind of so strange, but the first time I actually heard them was, and this is very appropriate because the Winter Olympics are going on right now, is because a figure skater did like when figure skaters do like exhibit skates or just like kind of like fun skates, there was a skater that skated to Mic Drop, and it was the first time that I'd heard BTS, and I'm like, oh, that is not what I was expecting at all. This is like actually really, really cool. And it was like one of the remixes of Mic Drop, so BTS is kind of like almost even in the background of that remix a little bit. And so I went and I found the original song and then just like the regular Steve Aoki remix, and listened to those and was like, hey, this is a really fun song. Like I really need this energy in my life. I was working really hard on a project, and like must have listened to Mic Drop like 100 times just to like hype myself up for this project. But I kind of thought that's where it was gonna, stay. I thought it was gonna be like just a fun guilty pleasure song that I listened to. And then the reason why I have Valentine's Day as my official Army anniversary is because my goal for the project that I was working on was to have it be done by Valentine's Day of 2020. And when I was done, because it was like such hard work, I had kind of been watching like some funny little BTS videos here and there, because they kind of were like starting to pop up in the algorithm or get suggested to me. And so I was watching all these funny little compilation videos that ARMY had put together, and just like, it was very casual. It was like, haha, these are fun videos. And then when I was done with my project, I decided to just reward myself and take it easy and start watching more BTS videos. And again, it was mostly funny stuff. And then it was the speech at the United Nations from 2018. And I remember just like, I was lying in bed that night, just watching videos on my phone, and came across this video, and it literally made me sit upright, get back up, like sit upright in bed and watch this with just tears in my eyes and streaming down my face. And because it spoke to me so perfectly in a way that nothing else ever really did. And like, I never really heard a musician or a celebrity like really speak to what I felt in my life quite the same way that Namjoon did in that speech. And at that point is when it kind of shifted from me. And I mean, obviously, I still love silly, chaotic BTS content. I always have. I always will. I watched plenty of silly and chaotic BTS content after that, of course. But that was the moment that it shifted for me from, hey, this is a band that makes a song that I think is pretty cool and gives me energy and hypes me up and makes me laugh with these funny videos. And that's when it shifted to, this is really, really important, and this is life-changing. And like, I could feel it in that moment of just like, this is a paradigm shift. This really spoke to something in me that even I can't fully describe. And then it was just, I went from there. I listened to more songs. I watched more music videos. I stumbled across the music video for Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And as I've told you all in previous live streams, that's what made me an ARMY theorist, because I was just like, it opened up my mind. And then, of course, very shortly after that, Map of the Soul 7 came out. And so then I got to see BTS on the different shows while they were promoting Mot 7. And, I got to see them in The Tonight Show when they did On in Grand Central Station. And so it was a good time to become ARMY for that reason. Obviously, a lot of COVID-19 related things happened around that time as well. So there was a lot of things that were being canceled or moved to online only. So it wasn't good in that respect, but it was good from the respect of, I was also on quarantine. So basically I was able to spend my days, watching BTS content and really getting attached to them. And that's how I made my mom an ARMY during COVID quarantine. And, the rest, as they say, is history. And it's what made me very proud to call myself ARMY. All started that night. So this weekend is what I always say is my anniversary, and I always like to make a bit of a big deal about it, because it really was like a life-changing moment for me. So that's my full ARMY story. Yeah, exactly. Don't feed the bears. I like that description. It adds to your life rather than draining and lessening your happiness. It's the positive addition that is part of that. And I love reading all of when you all also kind of have your anniversaries, whether official or unofficial. For me, I probably wouldn't have had like a concrete date if I hadn't been working on that project that was had that hard goal of Valentine's Day being completed. And so that's what always kind of cements itself in my mind. Hello, Sonia. Thank you so much. Hello, Hitchhiker Hobbit. You have not missed much at all. I've been yammering about how I became ARMY because it's my ARMY anniversary. So kind of exactly like what we were discussing on Discord before I went to bed. But thank you all for being here. I'm really happy to see you today. So I think because it's the Valentine's Day weekend, and we were just talking about like the BTS giving us roses for this holiday, and talking about how my love for BTS started, I think it's a great weekend to talk about Love Yourself, which is why I really wanted to do the live stream today and focus on the Love Yourself, not just series, but the Love Yourself album series, of course, but also on the concept of love yourself, especially since the speech at the UN is the love yourself, speak yourself speech. And that was very important. It was like one of the first things I was getting from BTS was this notion of self-love. So it feels really fitting to talk about it this weekend, and I'm really excited to talk about it with all of you. And thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that I get to spend part of my anniversary with all of you. It's you all have made the last few years of this 6 years very special. It's been 6 years has been a while, and it's been a lot of ups and downs, both just in my regular life and in my Army life. Been a lot of hardships and trials and things, but it's also been great. As they say in the song "Moving On," we laughed a lot and cried a lot, but it's all been so beautiful. And I'm very excited to see what comes next. So I'm glad to be on this journey with all of you. It's really rewarding. Sorry, I'm getting very mushy on you all today, I know, but it's hard not to get mushy on such a wonderful occasion as an Army anniversary. All right. So, like I said at the beginning of this stream, this isn't going to be quite as much of a deep dive as I've done on albums in the past, like Wings and Map of the Soul 7, in part because Love Yourself is just so massive. It spans 3 albums. It's a ton of songs. So doing like a full analysis would be really, really hard to try and, kind of get through in one stream. So today what I want to talk about is the albums, the concept, self-love itself, and just kind of examine some of those things together. So, I don't have any like formal notes or anything today. I don't have slides for each individual song today. So it's going to be like a little bit more freestyle. And for those of you who are listening and commenting rather than just listening, I'd love to hear your thoughts as we go through this. So please feel free to add your own thoughts and experiences as much as you can. So with that in mind, as we go through everything today, I'm very curious about, and I'll be adding my own thoughts to this, of course, but I'm very curious to hear what you guys think about these 2 questions. And again, as much as you're comfortable with sharing, I know not everybody's comfortable like getting really, really personal with stuff, and love yourself is obviously like a very personal topic. So if you're not super comfortable sharing all of your thoughts about these topics, that's perfectly fine. I do not mind at all, to your comfort level. But the 2 questions that I'm kind of keeping in mind as we go through talking about Love Yourself today is, what is your experience with Love Yourself, both as the concept and the album series, but also as Love Yourself within your life? And the other one is why BTS's self-love is so unique. And I have a lot of thoughts about that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well as we move through. So we're definitely going to come back to these 2 questions as we go through today's information. Bomac, yes, me too. And that's something that I talk about a lot in my analysis, or like I said, we were just having that discussion on Discord. That's a big thing for me, that concentrating on romantic love, I believe, would have really diminished BTS's message. And like I said earlier, I work at a jewelry store. It's a very well-known jewelry store chain. One of the things that we sell there is engagement rings. So of course, like, our in-store music is almost exclusively love songs. And I tell you what, after an 8-hour shift, they all start to sound the same. Like, and you're just like, how is any of this new? How is any of this like charting new territory? And I think that's something that really drew me to BTS for the first, when I was first getting into them as well, is because the way they talk about love is so different from the way most people and most music and art and media talks about love. And they choose to not just focus on the romantic elements. They choose to focus on platonic love and, love for self and love for the world, which we'll also get into as we'll be talking about like the Love Myself campaign and things like that. So there's so much more that goes into when BTS says the word love. It's huge and multifaceted in a way that sometimes it's not always in other, media. So that's something I've always loved. Yes, Sonia. Yeah, Epiphany, and it was so rewarding to hear Epiphany come back in Jin's concerts, because Epiphany is just so iconic. And when you hear it sung, you really get that feeling and that sense of like how vitally important that message is. And I'll always cherish that. And we'll definitely be talking about like the songs that where I think there's a lot of songs that fit the idea of self-love in BTS's discography, but we'll talk about the ones that specifically use the phrase, and then we can kind of also talk about some of the other songs that kind of fit that idea and fit the multifaceted ideas of love, because I think there's so many. Hitchhiker Hobbit, that sounds hilarious. I could honestly see that being like such a perfect comedy sketch, because it really, when you are stuck in an atmosphere where you have to listen to love songs for like 8 solid hours of a work shift, you're just like, more of this, great. Hello, and hello to everybody who just jumped in. It's good to see all of you. Thank you for being here today. I hope you've been having a good weekend so far. Hope your day is going well, and thank you for coming and spending some of your Sunday with us. So speaking of the self-love songs, so like I said, these are specifically the songs in the discography that mention self-love by name. And it's really interesting because I think you can kind of trace a little bit of a development just when you look at these songs. And then obviously there's so many other songs that I believe really get to self-love as a concept. And even if they're not using that actual terminology, there is a lot of other songs that we could analyze. But these are definitely the ones I think that you could say are like put forth the foundational ideas of love yourself as a concept through BTS's work, starting even in Wings, which I think is really interesting, that Wings kind of bridged us into that love yourself era. If you watched my Wings live stream that I did a few months ago, I talk about how I love Wings so much because it's like that foundational middle section of their discography and really helped us get into some of these other topics. So. Yep, Hitchhiker Hobbit. Exactly. Me too. As somebody, me, you know this from me talking about it previously. If you all have listened to some of my older lives, and of course Hitchhiker Hobbit knows it well because we talk about it on Discord all the time, but I also don't experience romantic love. That doesn't mean that I hate romantic love or anything. I just don't actually experience it in my life. I don't have that part of my brain. And so I think that sometimes the overemphasis on romance can be very detrimental. And even though there's nothing wrong with romantic love and romantic love is great, I think there also needs to be, especially in our media and in our art and our culture, we do need those other things to emphasize, like platonic love. And something that I'm looking forward to talking about in upcoming videos and things like that is how unique the love between BTS and ARMY is, and how that is just a really beautiful, unique platonic love. And so I think BTS really encourages us to look at those different forms of love and to really embrace those into our day-to-day life, and to see that love is a more multifaceted concept. A lot of times when people say love, they mean romance, but those are not the same thing. Romantic love is a type of love, but there are so many other forms of love. And I think BTS's music really helps us get to that core, and the Love Yourself era is such a good example of that. Oh, yeah, Hitchhiker Hobbit, it can be hard. It can be really, really hard. I have a personal blog where I talk about a lot of this stuff. It's funny, the project that I mentioned that I was working on for Valentine's Day in 2020 that I then rewarded myself with BTS content was actually this personal blog where I talk about a lot of this stuff. So it all kind of, it meshes back together. It's all part of my life, that these two things are very intrinsically entwined. And it's something that I talk about on there a lot, that the overemphasis on romantic love is actually not only detrimental to people who don't prioritize romantic love in their life, but it actually is kind of devaluing to romantic love as a concept. Ironically enough, the overemphasis on the concept is detrimental to the concept. I agree. I agree with everything you all are saying in the live chat, and thank you all for being very, very cool about that. It can be a difficult conversation to have with a lot of people for a lot of reasons, because a lot of people, I think, feel the need to defend romantic love. And there's very much, in my opinion, there's very much this feeling from some people and some parts of society where if you want to de-emphasize romantic love, they see that as a bad thing. And I think with all things, balance is what you need the most. There needs to be a balance of various types of love, which again is something that I think is great about BTS's discography, that definite balance of concepts. Oh, Javine, that is really, really interesting. I love that. That is so great. And I think that would make the boys very happy. And on some level, I can definitely relate with that. When like going to a BTS concert, for instance, you're like, I want to go and support the boys and do that. But you also, for me, doing that and loving BTS unapologetically and not listening to people who have, like made fun of me for it over the years or things like that has definitely been an exercise in, you know, kind of asserting myself and my own interests and my own likes and not caring what other people think, which is so vitally important. And I think that's such an important part of, as you progress through life and, how do you assert your own self and how do you speak yourself, quite literally. And that's, I remember when I was listening to that speech at the UN for the first time, the phrase that really pierced my heart and just like really made me feel so deeply was the idea of losing your voice and becoming like a ghost. And, thinking about how other people knew what that struggle was like, because that was a big thing that I was going through, of just like losing my voice and losing my ability to speak, and how that was kind of forcing me to define myself by other people's definitions. And so BTS saying, no, break out of that, that has been such an exercise in self-love for me. Yeah, you're so right. It really does make you feel part of something beautiful and special. And it reminds me of, there's a section in Beyond the Story, in their book Beyond the Story, where they talk about how when you're a fan of something, it doesn't become like, it doesn't like subsume the rest of your life. It doesn't like erase the other things in your life and now you're just this fangirl. The way that fandom works is that it's an addition to your life, and like it gives your life new direction, or it gives your life, new focuses, but it becomes a part of you, and like your experiences shape the way you interact with this thing that you love in a fandom sense. And I think that's really interesting too, that it's your own personal ideas and journeys and struggles really go into this as well. And that's always been how it's been for me as an army too, where it's just like so much of my personal circumstances form that as well. Yeah, Javine, I love that so much. That is just like, that is so special. And the idea of doing it for your own self and for your own self-interest, while also doing it to support BTS. I think that is part of where that really beautiful relationship between BTS and ARMY comes in. It really is like symbiotic, like they help us, we help them. And our own growth can be felt in that way. And I think that's really special. Yeah, that I love that, restoring yourself and restoring your self-worth, and I can definitely agree with that as well. BTS definitely came to me at a period of time in my life where I did feel like a ghost, like Namjoon says in his speech, and I just sort of felt like nobody listens to me, nobody, and obviously that's a little bit dramatic because I'm very, very blessed with like a great support system. Like my family's great, I have, good friends, things like that. But it's very easy to feel like I was always the person who was just like keeping my thoughts to myself and not really speaking my own truth, and just like letting myself kind of get, pushed to the background and things like that. And finding BTS really reminded me to, use my own voice and to value my own self in a way that, no other person can. Only you can give yourself that type of love. So definitely. And so many of these messages start right here in the Love Yourself series. Yeah, Estonia, it's really amazing. And I feel very blessed that, we do have all of those spaces and things like that, and that this can be one of them. It's really exciting. Hitchhiker Hobbit, yeah. I've still, it's so interesting to me. So, for those of you in the United States, you maybe I'm not a sports person, so I don't watch the Super Bowl. I've never really have. And so this year, the artist Bad Bunny performed, and I work with a lot of people at my job for whom watching Bad Bunny perform and perform in Spanish was so important to them. And they were telling me about this, and I said, that's amazing. I love hearing that. And I said, and it reminds me of what I feel about BTS. And obviously, I'm not Korean, so it's not that I'm like getting the cultural element of like, this is my culture being portrayed, but literally my coworkers were using some of the same phrases that we use as ARMY. They were saying like, you don't need to know Spanish to have been able to like watch him and feel his music and understand without, and it's just like, it was so rewarding to be able to connect with some of my coworkers who maybe don't get BTS quite as much, or just think of it as like Rachel's little obsession that she has, and to be able to say, but like, this is what we say about BTS too, and this is why it's so valuable. And being able to have other cultures represented in music, and to be able to say you can just feel it and you can understand the emotion, and it's just that type of thing. And it's just like you said, Hitchhiker Hobbit, I wish more people understood that and could make those own connections in their own life, of being able to say sometimes it's more than just music. It's not hysteria. It's not, oh, I'm just a crazy fangirl. It means something, and it's valuable, and it's important. For some people it is a representation of their culture, and for some of us it's a representation of our feelings and our emotions, and that is so valuable. And that's a thing too that I think about a lot. And like, no shade to other artists or anything, of course, but kind of going back to my experiences listening to music at work, there are no self-love songs that I've ever heard that sound like BTS's self-love songs. And a lot of times this air quotes self-love songs that I do hear that are like the mainstream music equivalent of the self-love idea, a lot of it is still romantic love. It's like this idea of I think you're beautiful, so you should think you're beautiful. Like that type of thing. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's really nice, but it's not the self-love that BTS really gives us in songs like those that I have on screen. You know what I mean? So it's a whole different way of expressing self-love and thinking about your own self. Javine, I'm just reading your comments now. That is so nice. I love that you were, kind of ARMY, like added to your community and like made you feel more welcome. That's beautiful. Oh, Butterfly Young. I love that description. I love that description so much. That's really awesome. But yeah, so, and it's just the vulnerability too, like just looking on the screen of seeing like the vulnerability in a song like Reflection, or the vulnerability in a song like Epiphany, or in Answer Love Myself. BTS's music having those vulnerable elements in them are so important. And this is something too that I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I've been working on my video for the Welcome Home BTS series for Yoongi, and I've been talking about August D. And so much of August D is so raw and vulnerable. And I think that is so valuable. And, it would be so, like, BTS could very easily have just put out very standard songs, whether you consider them standard for K-pop or standard for the Western music industry. And that could have just been how they made their music. But part of why I think BTS has surpassed so many other artists in both Korea and here in the West is because they let themselves get so real. Looking at the love yourself line for Reflection, I wish I could love myself. That is so raw. And it's just, I don't really think you see that super often in other types of quote self-love music. And there's nothing wrong with like a good empowering bop, like I'm a fan of a lot of those types of songs, but to me, they ultimately don't carry as much weight as a song like Reflection or a song like Epiphany, where you do explore those vulnerabilities and they're not just, like power ballads. They are actual, like, in-depth explorations of the self. And I just think that's part of why the Love Yourself series is just so different from anything else. Yeah, Hitchhiker Hobbit, that's such a bummer. I feel like all of us probably have like at least one person in our life like that just kind of think that all of it. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had like strangers comment that to me, and you're just like, okay, why are you giving me your unsolicited opinion? Like I've had Uber drivers just like make fun of my BTS obsession and things like that. I'm just like, okay, I don't know you. You're a stranger and I don't like seeing this side of you. I'm glad I don't know you in regular life, because a lot of people do, just like you said, they keep themselves in their bubble and in their preconceived notions. And it is a shame, as Yoongi himself once said, you'll like their music if you listen without prejudice. The other thing too that kind of talking about people not getting it, something that I find really interesting when talking about self-love as a theme in BTS's work is that a lot of people, and I would be curious to hear all of your thoughts too, because I'm not sure if this is just a thing like here in the West or in my country and culture, or if you all have experienced it too. But a lot of times when I move outside of like the BTS bubble or the ARMY bubble and you see self-love in other places, a lot of people tend to think of self-love as selfish, which is wild to me. And it's something that I've mentioned in other videos. Like, I know I mentioned this in the Pied Piper video that I did, and I might mention it in one or two other videos as well, where I think that is proof of how subversive self-love is and how much self-love challenges the status quo. Because when you see people out there treating self-love like it's selfish, or like it's not something that you can achieve on your own, and if you try and achieve it on your own, that's selfish, it's really, really telling to me, I think, and it shows part of why, like, in some ways I almost feel like BTS's self-love message is revolutionary. And yeah, I all of everything everybody's saying in the chat right now too, I think is really accurate and on point. And I like that, that life is too short to not be enthusiastic, you know. And why, I mean, I don't see why, as long as you're not hurting yourself or other people, I don't see why you shouldn't be passionate about the things that you love. I think people being passionate about the things that they love is like one of the coolest features of getting to know a person, and to see, like, something that always makes me curious is when somebody is passionate about something like that, I always want to know why, because usually there's a reason. It's just whatever you're passionate about, whether it's, like a piece of media, like maybe my parents and I love Star Trek, like, and I always find it interesting. It's like, what spoke to you about Star Trek, and or if you're really into superheroes, what speaks to you about superheroes? And it's just, sometimes it doesn't have to be that deep. Sometimes people just like what they like. It doesn't always have to have a reason. But I think for a lot of people, when they are passionate about it, there is a reason. It's given them something in their life that they really need, or that they were lacking in other parts of their life. And this gave it to them, And so it's just like, I always find it really interesting. And it reminds me of what Namjoon himself said in the UN speech, where he's saying, tell me your story. I want to hear your voice. And it's just, I always love hearing about like what spoke to you about the thing that you love and that you're passionate about. Why did it, what did it spark in you and why? And I just always think that's so interesting. Don't feed the bears. You're so right. Self-hatred is absolutely an epidemic. And I wish more people had the ability to step out of it. Self-love isn't necessarily always the answer or like the final word on how to fix that. And self-hatred, it's hard to shake. And I know that over my 6 years of being Army and going on this journey, it's difficult to remove yourself from that part of yourself that experiences self-hatred. But more people should have the tools to solve it. And it is always a shame when society keeps it from people. And I just find that really, really sad and really telling that people do that. Javine, yeah, you're so right. And I have it on a later slide, but they talk about that a lot throughout the Love Yourself series as well. Yes, exactly. And like with other people's passions, you can, learn new things. And that's been something I've really enjoyed in my own life, is sharing my passions with other people and seeing how they react, and other people sharing their passions with me. And, we all take something new and different from those things. It's really exciting. It's an exciting process. So real quick, I want to go through, eventually I'll break down the albums themselves, but I do also, just to kind of keep this conversation going, because this conversation is amazing, I do want to actually jump into kind of like what we were just talking about, the idea of self-love and true love. So in the Love Yourself album series, we have 3 albums. We have Love Yourself Her, Love Yourself Tear, and Love Yourself Answer. The descriptions of these albums online on Big Hit's website are really, really interesting to me, because they really get to the core of what we were just talking about, and how, what is self-love, what is love, what is true love. And it's really interesting to me because these descriptions actually kind of change a little bit depending on what you're reading. I think one of the most obvious examples of this attitude is, again, going back to Namjoon's speech at the UN, is where he talks about the Love Yourself campaign was built on the idea that true love first begins with loving myself. So that is, obviously a through line of the Love Yourself series. That's June's description of it. But I think it's really interesting, and I've highlighted them here for those of you who are also watching rather than just listening. I've highlighted them on screen. The descriptions for Her, Tear, and Answer all kind of have like an interesting take on that. So for Love Yourself Her on Big Hit's website, the description is: loving yourself is the beginning of true love. All the different faces of love expressed through the signature music of BTS. Love Yourself Her is an expression of the anxiety and elation of love told in the unique style of BTS. The love that BTS aims to convey in the Love Yourself series is both the individual experience of a boy growing into adulthood, liminal space, anybody, and a message of peace and unity to our society today. In the mini album, Her, that begins this new narrative, the image of boys in love for the first time are expressed in a refreshing and cheerful take that aims to talk about the topic of love while immersed in a coming-of-age tale. So what I find really interesting about that is, not only does it say the Love Yourself is the beginning of true love thing, but it's also talking about how the Love Yourself series is going to be both individual experiences and messages of peace and unity. So I think that goes back to what we were saying about the different multifaceted expressions of love, and how I'm really fascinated by the idea of how Love Yourself as a concept became so outward focused, and how they gave that to the rest of the world and gave it to Army. And I think that's really interesting. And to know that like peace and unity were already like a huge thing that they wanted to discuss in this album series is just really, really fascinating to me. And then when we go to Love Yourself Tear, that description changes a little bit. So this is the description again on Big Hit's website for Tear. Fake love inevitably leads to loss and separation, for true love can only begin when you learn to love yourself. BTS's Love Yourself series bears the message that loving oneself is the beginning of true love. So we see that phrase again. Whereas the previously and I'm going to get to this thing with this description here in a few minutes. So keep this in mind. Keep this next sentence in mind. Whereas the previously unveiled Love Yourself Wonder and Love Yourself Hurt albums express the heart-fluttering and tingling moments of love, Love Yourself Tear album embodies the pain of boys faced with parting. So I highlighted the two phrases of true love can only begin when you learn to love yourself, and loving oneself is the beginning of true love. So when we hop over to the description for Love Yourself answer, it says again, loving oneself is where true love begins, but then that description changes a little bit as we get further into the description. So first unveiled in March of 2016, the BTS Love Yourself series creates a narrative by linking the key songs in each album into a single theme, imparting the message that loving yourself is true love. Like a well-written novel having introduction, development, twists, and conclusion, it shared a compelling story for 2.5 years. Answers the final piece of the puzzle. Though it's a repackaged album, Love Yourself Answers still includes 7 brand new tracks, blah, blah, blah. So the rest of that. So what I highlighted here is that we once again have that loving oneself is where true love begins, but later in that description, we also have loving yourself is true love. So that is a bit of a different idea. The idea that first you have to love yourself and then you can experience true love is kind of different from saying self-love is true love. And I'm really interested in that description of just sort of maybe the idea, and it reminds me a bit of Epiphany, I'm the one I should love, and seeing how that idea evolves and how at the end of this series, maybe we have the idea that the pure love, the true love, is the love you experience for yourself. So I find that very interesting. And these are all on Big Hit's website, and they all trace the journey of the album. And I just find that really, really fascinating. Beyond just the albums and the self-love message in the albums, we of course also have the Love Myself campaign information, which is what Namjoon is talking about at the UN. They had partnered with the UN to do this. And this was a really interesting campaign, and they've kept it going for years and years and years. But the start of it was right here during the Love Yourself series. And it was accompanied by like a really beautiful video, just like encouraging people to love themselves and use this to overcome hardships in life, which again is at the core of the UN speech as well, and how all of this kind of came from, you can't really see it because the picture's kind of tiny, but they're holding different signs that were related to that campaign that they were partnered with for UNICEF, which was an end violence program. And so I believe personally that, so we have the albums themselves representing the concept of how love and self-love develop. Then we have the Love Myself campaign kind of taking that out into the world and that being another facet. And just like we had all of those songs that represent, the different elements of self-love and all of those lyrics that represent. And then I think we have the beautiful quote that kind of can almost be added to those song lyrics from Namjoon's speech at the UN of, I have come to love myself for who I am, for who I was, and for who I hope to become. And so I just feel like that is a beautiful way to summarize the entire Love Yourself series as well, is going from loving yourself to speaking yourself and embracing all of those parts of who you are. And it's such an interesting way that concept progressed throughout all of the Love Yourself series and other elements that were part of it. And I know that was a lot of talking and reading, so I'd be curious what all of you think. And we will also be diving in as well. Like I said, we're not going to be like diving into each individual song and everything in the albums, but we will also be getting into the albums themselves and like some of their themes and songs as well. So we'll jump to that in a minute. Yes, Javine, you're so right. I agree that it's a lifetime journey to get to self love, which is something too that I don't think a lot of people understand. You know, when we talk about the way people view self love, you know, kind of in a negative sense, I don't think people understand that you don't just like wake up one day and go, "Oh yes, I love myself now," and then it's done. You know, it's a journey that you continually go through. Yes, AK. I so agree. And it's interesting. I remember seeing a Bora City magazine video a little while back talking about how like BTS did like the self-love stories, and then like other bands tried to do them too, but you know they kind of rings a little bit more disingenuine when you're quick trying to jump on the bandwagon, you know, as opposed to like the very organic way that, you know, oop, not the slide I wanted, that slide, you know, when you see how these songs developed over, you know, multiple years and multiple albums, you know, that rings a little bit more genuine to me than somebody just going, you know, quick, put self-love in your album so we can join the trend. Don't feed the bears. Yeah, I think that is like really, really a vital step too as well. And it's just, there's so many things in life and in society and in culture and in the people around us that try and keep us from like feeling that way, of being like, you know, let me get to the core of who I am and love that person. And it's such an important journey, and it's such a long journey. Like Javine said as well, you know, it's one that you have to like continually run that race, you know, you can, you know, you never can really stop, but it's very worth it and very rewarding. It's funny, there is actually one song, when I was like talking about the songs that play at work, there's one song that plays on our soundtrack that is about self-love, and I don't actually know who sings it. It sounds like it could be Whitney Houston, but it doesn't quite sound like her, so I'm not sure who it actually is. I'd have to look it up, but it's like a very cool self-love song, but there's one line in it that I totally disagree with it, and it's like, oh, loving yourself is like the easiest form of love, and I'm like, that is absolutely not true. It's the most, and like, I love the song because it talks about how rewarding self-love is and how important self-love is, but it's definitely not easy. And it is definitely something that you have to continually choose, especially when other things in life and society and in culture don't want you to love yourself. Hitchhiker Hobbit, that is incredible. That is so incredible. And I am really, really, really proud of you. And thank you very much for sharing that with us. I honestly, yeah, I can imagine that BTS definitely was a factor in that. And like, that's really, really exciting. And yes, you're so right too, that and that's something that I kind of mentioned a little bit in my most recent video about the, you know, when I was talking about the BTS machines and their journeys, is like the self-love journey that they talk about in their music rings so much more, you know, impressive and impactful when you know that they're feeling it too. You know, they're not just singing it for the benefit of singing it or because they think that it's going to play well to their audience. You know, that's what they're feeling. And that's part of too where, you know, the way BTS connects with us is so, you know, impressive as well and so impactful as well, because we're seeing them talk in real time about their own struggles and how they feel inadequate, or, you know, their own struggles with self-love, and then we see these songs and it's like, it's very powerful. Oh, Hitchhiker Hobbit, yeah, that is definitely going to be cause for celebration. You have so much to celebrate. I love that. Exactly, one more step on loving yourself. That is so great. Hitchhiker Hobbit, that is a great way of celebrating. I love that. And I wish you luck. I hope that you can convince them to let you watch it on the big screen, because, you know, they might not still understand, because I feel like there's always going to be people in our lives who don't understand BTS. But I feel like if they could actually see what this is about, just maybe they'd change their minds a little bit. Maybe. So I'll be crossing my fingers for you. Let us know how it goes. Yeah, Metaloop. I think you're right, and I just, you know, it's kind of interesting. Um, this video that they did for the Love Myself campaign, if you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while, it's so worth a rewatch. And I feel like they really are almost kind of talking about like the inner light without, you know, because they're not really talking in that video. It's more just like visualizing. But the idea of like self-love being like that inner light and driving force is so interesting. And I definitely think you can see it there. Yeah, Javine, you know, I remember that. And we were actually talking about that on Discord just recently as well. Just the idea of, you know, have I ever really experienced love? And I think part of that could be because of the way society defines love, and makes it so difficult for us to actually know what true love is, you know? So yes, and love is as close to the divine as we can get is such a great idea. And it reminds me of the quote from Les Miserables: to love another person is to see the face of God. And I don't think that has to be romantic love, you know? I think that can just be, you know, and again, going back to our earlier conversation of people say love a lot of times in modern culture and they actually mean romance. And it's just like, but love doesn't just have to mean romance. It doesn't just have to stay there. Yes, Butterfly Young. We will actually get to that theory, because I love that, and I think it's so interesting, and I can't wait to talk about that, because there's so much in this era that is just so cool. Oh, that's so exciting that the Madrid concert is going to be around the time of your own Army anniversary. I love that. That is awesome. I know sometimes Javine, I think, needs to Javine, I think you're right that sometimes Namjoon, it's just like, if he's loved Army so much just through all of the things that he's sacrificed and all the things that he's shared with us, and it's just like, June, that's true love. You've shared true love with us. Yeah, exactly, Metaloop. Love is like the bigger thing than romance. It's like romance can be one facet of love, but love is such a bigger concept. And it's such a shame, because I know in other languages, like some languages have like dozens of words to express different types of love, and I feel like English is so limited where we just use the word love to just like mean everything, and it's just like we need other words, which is something that June has also talked about as well, where he said that he wishes he had a better word than love to describe certain emotions. And it's just like, you know, if we just understood that love was multifaceted, I think that would help a lot. Oh, Butterfly Young. I love that. I love that description. Gives you the confidence that it's possible. That is so true. That is so very true. So I want to look as well at the albums themselves, because we were just mentioning in the comments some of the ideas with the album. So let's get to that and unpack some of that. So we'll go through Her, Tear, and Answer really quick. So Love Yourself, Her as an album contains 9 tracks and then a hidden track. So it's Intro Serendipity, done by Jimin, DNA, Best of Me, the vocal lines song Dimple, Pied Piper, the skit of the Billboard Music Awards speech, which was literally just their speech from when they won Top Social Artist at Billboard, Mic Drop, Go Go, outro Her, done by the rap line, and then their hidden track was C. So that's a really good and really interesting combination. Oh yeah, Hitchhiker Hobbit, exactly. And I've even heard some languages have like dozens of words that describe love, and I'm just like, English is so lacking for that. right, moving on to Tear. So we get Intro Singularity, which was done by Taehyung, Fake Love, Vocaline's song Truth Untold, 134340, or as I like to just say, Pluto, Paradise, Love Maze, Magic Shop, Airplane Part 2, On Pun Man, So What, and then the rap lines outro Tear. So that's 11 songs on Love Yourself Tear. And then Love Yourself Answer, as we saw in that description that I was reading earlier, was kind of a repackage, but with new songs and some extended ones. So for Love Yourself Answer, we had 2 discs. So we have Euphoria, which was done by Jungkook, J-Hope's Trivia Just Dance, the full-length edition of Jimin's song Serendipity, DNA, Dimple by the Vocaline, June's song Trivia Love, the rap line's song Her, V's Singularity, Fake Love, Vocaline's Truth Untold, Suga's Trivia Seesaw, the rap line song Tear, Jin's Epiphany, I'm Fine, Idol, Answer Love Myself, and then on the next disc, Magic Shop, Best of Me, Airplane Part 2, Go Go, On Pun Man, and Mic Drop. And I didn't include like some of the other like remixes and stuff. So that made Love Yourself Answer a bit longer. But so what is really, really interesting about these albums, in addition to the fact that they're all fantastic, of course, and right, exactly, Sonia, it's an amazing track list, but these albums also represent, and the album series as a whole represents, the 4-part storytelling structure, and that is beginning, development, turn, and conclusion. And all of these elements of the storytelling structure are expressed via these characters. So beginning is Ki, development is Sung, turn is John, and conclusion is Kyul. And these characters are all present in the albums. So here for Love Yourself Her, you can see we have Sung. For Tear, you can see we have John. And for Answer, you can see we have Kyul. So the interesting thing is we don't have anything for Ki. And this is where Love Yourself Wonder comes in. And the quote that I have up there on screen is from the rap line song outro Her, which contains the line, all of my wonder, you're the answer, I call you her, 'cause you're my tear. And this character Ki, also shows up in the music video for Euphoria. That video is called Euphoria, Theme of Love Yourself Wonder, and it has the Ki there in the title. Ki is also the same character that's used for Just Dance. So if we jump back up to the track list, you can see we have Ki, and we don't have, the only one we don't have is Kyul. So we have Ki and Sung and Jun represented for Just Dance, Love, and Seesaw respectively, kind of tying them into those album concepts. And then we don't have one for Kyul because almost like Love Yourself Answer was in and of itself the answer. It didn't have a like character attached to it. But that goes back to what I read earlier, where it says the previously unveiled Love Yourself Wonder and Love Yourself Her albums. So the Big Hit website was talking about Love Yourself Wonder as if it was an album, which makes sense because it doesn't have a character the way the, you know, Ki doesn't have like an associated album the way the other ones do. So this is likely due to the fact that BTS took an extended hiatus around that time. 2018 was obviously like a very fraught time period for them. We've heard them talk about that. And so they had to take a little bit of a break. So it kind of seems very likely that Love Yourself was supposed to be 4 albums instead of 3. And we were supposed to have Love Yourself Wonder, Love Yourself Her, Love Yourself Tear, and Love Yourself Answer. So that little remaining forever eternal mystery of Love Yourself Wonder is something that I just love about the series so much. And I think it's kind of interesting to speculate how the albums would have been broken down if we had Love Yourself Wonder instead. Because then it also would have made sense because all of the 4 Vocaline songs would have each corresponded to an album, because then Euphoria would have gone on Love Yourself Wonder. Serendipity would have gone on Her, Singularity would have gone on Tear, and Epiphany would have gone on Answer. And it would have kind of made sense to pull everything together. Javine, I really like your descriptions too of like love is a verb, which is something that I think is really interesting. And again, I'm not shading any other artists. I'm not throwing shade or trying to criticize because, you know, a lot of artists do really great stuff with their platform and with their music. But for me, something that I find so profound about BTS and the Love Yourself message is the way they always were turning that into action and the way ARMY was turning that into action as well. You know, it wasn't enough to just write some songs that say, hey, love yourself. They were actively encouraging it. They were doing the Love Myself campaign, and ARMY was picking that up and then doing charitable works and helping each other. And it's just like they turned love into action, which I think is so powerful and profound. Exactly, Butterfly Young will always keep wondering about wonder. Hitchhiker Hobbit, yeah, I love that description, like love not being a passive thing. And I think that is so true. And it it's it's such an important element of just like if you say that you love something but without actual action backed up with it, do you actually love the thing? And I think that can even be something that is true about self-love itself. Especially, yep, I absolutely agree. Self love is definitely not a passive thing. And kind of like we were saying earlier, I think it does require that, like, continually going back and choosing it. You know, you can't just wake up one day and say, okay, I love myself now. You have to continually choose self love, and that's a thing that happens day after day in various circumstances, and sometimes it gets challenged, and you know you need to come up with ways to continue to love yourself, and you know it's definitely a lifelong, ongoing process, and it's a challenge. And you know something to talking about like BTS's self-love message and like how people don't always appreciate it. Sometimes I think that BTS actually kind of scares people because of the fact that they teach self-love. I think like teaching people self-love is almost threatening sometimes, which again is something I mentioned in my Pied Piper video of just how like powerful it is to teach other people to love themselves, or in BTS's case, maybe not teaching people so much as encouraging them. You know, when you encourage somebody to love themselves, you know, you're kind of threatening the hold that other people have over them. You're breaking them out of the limitations of other people. And I think that's very powerful, and I think it scares people. Butterfly Young, I love that's a beautiful description. Yeah. And I like that description too of like BTS makes you aware of it, makes you aware of like the various types of love, whether that's self love or other types of love. Love is not a feeling, but an act. Yeah. An act of your will. I love that. And with something like self love, it's that like I said earlier, just that feeling of actually doing self-love and performing self-love and you know making that a part of your life is almost revolutionary. You know, you're almost like pushing back against the things that would control you, and that's why I'm so sorry. It's really windy outside today, so there's like a ton of background noise outside my window. I am so sorry, but um let me go back up to the songs here. These are the five songs, like I said, that mention self-love, like by, you know, by name, by actually having the words in there. But there are so many songs both in the Love Yourself series and outside of the Love Yourself series that I think can still actually be songs about loving yourself, or songs that you can think of as like part of the journey to love yourself. Kind of like I said in my video that I did for our Macnays, when I was talking specifically like about Jimin, of just like Lie is not a song about self-love, but Lie is a song that was like an essential stepping stone on the journey of self-love. So there's a lot of songs like that too, where it's just, it shows you how complicated and multifaceted self-love is. I like that too, Javine, of just like the choice, like, do you, it's something you choose, and like, do you continue to make that choice? And that's something too that, going back to talking about like the overemphasis of romance in our society, that's something that I talk about a lot when I analyze that for like my own personal work and, my personal blog and things like that. Not to get too up into like that type of theorizing and take us too far off track, but it's something that I talk about a lot, where if you are overemphasizing one type of love over the other, in this case, if you're overemphasizing romantic love, in many ways, you're actually taking away people's abilities to choose that. And if you're forcing that onto people and you're saying to people, this is normal, this is what normal people do, this is what society expects you to do, you're actually removing that ability for people to choose for themselves, which is kind of goes against the very idea and concept of love. Oh yeah, Butterfly Young. I remember that. I remember them talking about that. And I think that anybody who criticizes them for that has not stopped to really consider what self-love means and what it is, and that it's such an ongoing process. And it's so difficult. I mean, I am probably one of the biggest like supporters of self-love that you will ever meet. I literally have like jewelry that says, love yourself and like things like that. And I wear it every day. And I always talk about this concept, both within like the BTS context and outside of it. But there are still days where whatever's going on around me, whether it's other people or society or expectations or, any number of things, will make me resort back to like those feelings of self-hatred and self-doubt. And it's just, it's not something that you achieve at. You don't go and then you're like, no, I'm at self-love and I've achieved it and I've arrived at the end of my journey. It's not like a hero's journey from point A to point B. It's an ongoing process. It's kind of a maze. Yeah, I think you're so right, Butterfly Young, that people like look at it as, oh, who are you to teach us, and you're a hypocrite and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, that's not how self-love works at all. And it's not how BTS's idea of self-love works. It's a journey that we take together and we help each other. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right, Javine. You're so right. I think a lot of different, and again, that's part of why self-love and reminding people that self-love is so important to love as a concept, why that is threatening to some people. Yeah, and Metaloop, and I think that opens up like so many other discussions too about how society views that. It's nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you're here with us today. Sorry, I'm multitasking. I have like multiple tabs open because I'm referencing like other things that I've written notes on about self love. So if I go quiet, it's because I'm reading other notes and bouncing back and forth. I apologize. You all know that I'm not very good at multitasking. So one thing too, just because we happen to be on the screen with the songs, this reminded me something that I love about having these songs together. Like having looking at these 5 songs is because it shows how different self-love can be in each instance. So, for instance, Cypher Part 4. Cypher Part 4 is like this awesome, hyped up, blisteringly intense track, but it's still about self-love. And then you go, same thing with Idol, like You Can't Stop Me Loving Myself is like such a defiant, powerful thing. And then you have something as like kind of sweet and poignant as Epiphany and Answer Love Myself. And it shows that you can go from like a really intense, powerful song, like, a really intense, powerful form of self-love, and then like a really mild and sweet and tender idea of self-love. And it's like all of those things are valid. They all, all of those are self-love, and they're all essential to use in different contexts. And I think that's a really interesting and unique thing of, really unique facet of BTS's self-love message as well, and something that I think is really important. And I'm not sure if that question in the live chat was directed at me. If it is, no, I am not Korean. I am actually I live in America, so I am an American, originally from Pennsylvania, now living in Florida. But I love BTS. I've been a BTS ARMY for 6 years, and I love to talk about them with everybody. So I think that among my audience, there are some people who are Korean, but we're from all over the world. Some of us from here in the United States, some of us from in Europe and beyond, South America and different parts of Asia. So we have a really, really unique and diverse group here, which is really, really cool. We're a kind of small community, but we have so much diversity in our community. Yeah, Sonia, it's really amazing how, because again, kind of BTS could have just gone with like very safe, like let's do like upbeat self-love songs, or let's do self-love ballads, but they didn't just limit themselves to that. There's a, kind of like a very melancholy sadness about reflection, and then there's so much fire in Cypher Part 4 and Idol, and then there's so much tenderness in Answer Love Myself and Epiphany, and it's just like all of those are self-love. Yes, you're so right, Butterfly Young. Exactly. It's like we've got all of the ways of expressing self-love. You don't have to choose. And that's like Don't Feed the Bears just said, that's something that I find really exciting too about our community when we have these discussions. We all come from such different backgrounds. We're different ages. We come from different cultures. We have different heritages that we come from, but we all are, not only are we all united by BTS, but we can all have these conversations, and even though we're bringing different context from our life to this discussion, we're still talking about what it means to love yourself, and we're still talking about the unique forms of love that exist. And that to me is just so powerful to be able to have a conversation like that with people all around the world is so special. And I think that is a perfect kind of segue into the questions that I introduced earlier of just like our experiences with self-love are so, tinged with our own experiences as people and where we come from. And I think that's so interesting to me of just like how do we experience self-love in our lives, and what does self-love mean to us? And that quote from Beyond the Story comes back to mind as well of just like being a BTS fan is one part of our life, and those parts of our life kind of inform our experiences, and it's really interesting to think. Yeah, Javine, I do too. I have a few friends who. I have some friends who have really embraced BTS and listening to BTS's music and who, are right there with me on loving their songs. But I have a couple other friends who have like totally and utterly resisted any attempts to get them to listen to BTS, and that's okay. We love them anyway. So I also we've been talking about this kind of peppered throughout the live stream, but that I really want to just come back to the idea of why BTS's self love is so unique. Like we were just saying, they kind of give you a variety of emotions and messages to express that idea of self love, and they're living it themselves, and they're not afraid to be raw and vulnerable about it. But I'm also curious too of just, as we've gone through self-love with BTS, is there anything that I've missed in talking about why BTS's self-love is so unique? Do you all have any thoughts about that? I would love to hear your thoughts as we kind of circle back to these two questions of your own experiences with self-love and with the Love Yourself album series, and with like why BTS's self-love is so special. I love that. Don't feed the bears. Self love is about forgiveness and kindness for you. Absolutely. Those are both so important. And they're both very difficult. It can be very, very difficult to kind of give yourself that grace. It's something that I talk about with a good friend of mine all the time, of just like, how your brain can trick you into just like thinking the worst things about yourself or believing the worst things about yourself. So, it can be a struggle and a challenge. Javine, I love that description. There's such a purity to, and this is why I love this picture that I found to use for the screen that we're on right now. There's just something so like wholesome and lovely about how they're looking out as they get their picture taken here, and just like they're taking in everything around them. And there's just something so pure about that love. Um, it's funny because it's kind of like we were saying earlier, when we love BTS and we go to a concert or we buy merch or something, obviously we're getting something out of that. They're getting something out of that. So it's like, but the relationship between BTS and ARMY is never like transactional. It's not that we're just buying stuff and they're profiting from it. It's never been like that. It's that we are engaging in shared experiences with them in a way that is so unlike any other type of relationship, and it's just, that connection, even though they don't know us personally, we don't know them personally, it's so powerful to share that love with them. Yeah, that's a really interesting connection to Javine. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people who have like had successful careers like that, sometimes maybe it does start to become a burden, and almost like you're trapped. And I've never gotten that feeling from BTS. The only time I ever really got the feeling that they were trapped is when they couldn't perform during COVID, and when they had to upend their lives in, to stop performing. And it's just like those are the only times where they ever seem like they're held back. Otherwise, when they're performing, they seem like they come alive. Yeah, that's a really good description too, Bomac, that it's just like, I think if they had just done like self-love music. If they had just said, oh, self-love in their songs and kept it at that, it wouldn't be as impactful as it is when they are, talking about it outside of their music. And, that takes us back to the Love Myself campaign and, the speech at the UN and the way they live it and the way they're open and honest about that. And I just think that's so powerful. And yeah, and that too, AK, of just like everybody always wants to just be like, oh yes, they must just be a K-pop boy band, but it's just like, when's the last time you've ever heard any type of boy band do songs like, Epiphany or Answer Love Myself or Reflection? It's just like I personally have never heard anything like those songs, and I just think that only BTS can tell those stories because they just have that unique way and that fearlessness of talking about the issues that are important and that matter and are difficult to talk about. That's, yeah, I like that description too, Butterfly Young, that it's just like through their vulnerability, they make us feel understood. And being understood is a very pure way of feeling loved. I love that. That is such a good description. And I think it's so true as well. There's like that implicit trust between BTS and ARMY of like, it kind of reminds me of the lines of Moon, of just like, what if you see my painful wounds? But it's like, Moon and Respect are both kind of together as songs on Map of the Soul 7. And I love that in Moon, it's this question of like, what if you see all the painful parts of myself? And in Respect, they're talking about how like you're continually looking, you're re-inspecting something. And so it's like, even when you see the wounds and the flaws, you want to actually keep looking. And I think that is such a powerful idea too, of just like, part of love and part of the action of love is like that trust and understanding. Yeah, Javine, you're so right. You're so right. And you know, I it's always really sweet when you watch a piece of BTS media, and you always see that they put a little shout out to Army, and it's changed over the years. Like right now, it's our special thanks to our universe Army. It used to be our biggest voice Army, things like that. And it's just, that is so genuine, and that is so pure. Don't Feed the Bears, universal longing for something truer. I love that description because that's something that I actually talk about all the time, of just like how longing is different from, necessarily, like, again, a lot of people consider longing to be a romantic emotion, but there's like so many things that people long for in life that don't have to be bound up to romantic love. And just, there's definitely a lot of that, I think, throughout the Love Yourself series and throughout, other BTS music as well. And that, the kind of, I had mentioned earlier, the way Love Yourself became, like this external project. Obviously self-love started in themselves, and it was a personal thing to them, but then that self-love message was projected out into the world. And I think that is really indicative too of their love and their attention and dedication to Army, is that they were giving us those tools. They weren't keeping those as just things for themselves, they were giving them to other people, and they were creating projects and campaigns and videos and all sorts of things that they were, giving that to other people to help them love themselves. And there's, that's such a powerful notion. And for me personally, talking about my experiences with both the Love Yourself albums and with self love, being, kind of getting into Wings early like I did, having Cypher Part 4 and Reflection were kind of like my first real introductions to like BTS's Love Yourself message. And then when you get into songs like Idol or Answer Love Myself, and I've told you guys this in the past, Answer Love Myself was one of the songs that they did in their encore when I saw them in Permission to Dance on stage in LA. And I was weeping when they did Answer Love Myself, because it's just, that is my journey with BTS, is that line, "You've shown me I have reasons I should love myself." That's my journey with BTS and with self-love. And it's been such an impactful journey to go on with them. It's also something that I talked about when I did my video for Namjoon's mixtape Mono, and I talked about how like Mono changed a lot of my life philosophy, and Moonchild changed a lot of my perceptions of self. And kind of gave me permission. And I think that's a big thing for me with BTS's Love Yourself message, is hearing them give voice to things that were very, on point to my experiences. It felt like they gave me the tools that I needed, and that they were saying like, it's okay. You can love yourself. You don't need to wait for somebody to come along and, validate you. You can validate yourself. And that's a line in Answer Love Myself too. Even loving myself felt like it required someone else's permission, and BTS's music, I feel like, didn't give me permission to love myself quite as much as it like showed me that it was okay. You know what I mean? That they're like, it doesn't matter if society doesn't understand you, or these people over here don't understand you. You still have intrinsic value and worth, and you're important, and you can go and show the world, and that's really powerful too, of just giving ARMY that, kind of say, hey, I can help you love yourself. I don't need to give you permission to love yourself. I can just help you. I can give you the language. I can give you the tools. I can give you that safe space to explore yourself. And that is just so important and so multifaceted. And I've never seen it from really anything else. So I think I'll probably be here for about like probably another 15-20 minutes. So if there's anything else that you all wanted to discuss about, whether it's specifically about the self-love conversation that we're having here, or the Love Yourself albums like as a whole, if there's anything, because I know I kind of jumped through the albums very quickly, if there's anything else that you wanted to discuss specifically about the Love Yourself albums, absolutely let me know. Or even if, we wanted to take the conversation in a different direction, if there's anything that you wanted to talk about, kind of that's still BTS related, but sort of only tangentially related to this concept, please let me know. Like I said, I'll be here for probably about another 15-20 minutes. Hitchhiker Hobbit. Yeah, I always love that line from Magic Shop so much, because I love that it's not you gave me the best of me, so I'll give you the best of you. It's you'll give you the best of you, and I think that's so powerful. Of just like, I almost feel like the message there is like, you are so capable of giving good things to yourself too, like if you can uplift BTS, you can uplift yourself, and I just think that's so beautiful. That's a great question, Javine, of like, which songs do I think they'll still sing for Arirang, for the Arirang tour? That's a great question. Personally, can I go back down? It's possible. I could see them doing the title tracks in a medley. Like, I could see them. I know when I saw them in PTDLA, they still did like part of DNA. They still did Fake Love. Um, so they did Idol, of course. So I could see any of those still making an appearance. I would honestly love Magic Shop. I would love to see Magic Shop or Best of Me or even Anpan Man, because for those of you who read the recently released GQ article, I know they were also talking about how, like, when ARMY charted Anpan Man again recently and like how much that meant to them. So it's like I would almost love to see Anpan Man. Since Mic Drop was my first ever BTS song, I'd love to see Mic Drop, but I don't know if they would do that again. But I mean, I think it has the power, it has the energy. I think that would be very cool. Yes, I agree, Hitchhiker Hobbit. I want So What, like getting to see So What at Jin's concerts in the encore with the water and just like, oh, that was so much fun watching them chase each other down the stage again with the water bottles. Oh, that made me so happy. Okay, Metaloop wants me to clown a little bit, which we love to clown. That's our hobby on Discord. How do I think they'll use the concept in Arirang? So, going back to Arirang and being, that's a very multifaceted topic as well. And something that I find really interesting about Arirang, as we were kind of discussing a few live streams ago when we were talking about that as the concept that they gave us, there are so many different words that are associated with just Arirang's concept, and like Arirang is supposed to be about love and separation and longing and, that whole thing. But kind of this whole discussion we've been having today is about how multifaceted love is. And I think this concept is really multifaceted too. So I could very easily see there being a bit of a self-love focus to this as well. And personally, I think, and I've mentioned this in previous live streams, I think that we're going to get a little bit of like a journeying type concept through, through Arirang's messages of just like a hero's journey almost. And I think that part of that journey might be about their own self-reflection, their own self-love, their own process for that. And I think personally, I'm almost thinking that each individual member is going to be talking about like what they've experienced over this period of time, in which they kind of had to be apart from each other and apart from us. And, I could definitely see some of that kind of come around of like, how did their individual experiences shape them, and was self-love a part of that? Did they struggle with self-love at any point? We've heard them talk very openly and rawly about some of their experiences and how this was a difficult time for them. Like, Namjoon's talked in several different lives at this point of just like the struggles that he went through, just, in the military and getting out of the military. So it's like, I feel like we'll probably see some songs that are about that process, even if they're not as like overtly self-love as some of the songs that we've gotten in the past, even if they don't mention them by, with the actual term love yourself like we see in these songs. I think we'll still get something that's kind of part of that journey. Because, as we've said a couple different times here today, self-love is an ongoing process, and sometimes you can slide back and, have to rebuild that self-love. I could see that definitely being part of the journey that I think Arirang is going to be about. So, I mean, I think we could see, even if it's not explicitly a self-love song, if we're not saying self-love in the lyrics, I think we could still see songs that put us in mind of that journey. Yeah, exactly, Sonia. There's so many different kinds of love and emotion that I think can be expressed in this album, and the fact that they've kind of put that idea forward in a lot of their discussions about the album is just and because it's their first album in such a long time and they can finally be back with ARMY, I'm sure there probably will be some songs and messages in there that are about the love that we all share together. So I think that would be really nice. And Hitchhiker Hobbit, I feel you. I think I might cry if they did Upon Man as well. Kind of like I cried when they did Answer Love myself, because it just so spoke to what I needed to hear. I think if they do Upon Man, I'll get emotional. Yeah, Metaloop. I'm really interested in, kind of the idea of Arirang being like a shared cultural heritage, and I think in some ways, just based on what I've heard from Korean people and Korean YouTubers and things analyzing, this album, even though we don't have any like substance yet, but like analyzing the idea of the album, they almost seem to feel like BTS's Arirang is going to be added to that cultural heritage. And so for me, I think that maybe it's going to be less of like a journey with an end goal or a destination quite so much as it is sort of adding to this ongoing story. You know what I mean? For me, I feel like a lot of BTS's work and a lot of their themes kind of make it feel like BTS are like constantly wandering. There's a lot of themes in their songs where they talk about always kind of moving forward, and it's like you have dream, hope, keep going. You have even something as simple as like in Airplane Part 2, they keep using the term mariachi, which very much feels like they're just wandering minstrels, they just wander and play their music. And I just kind of feel like there could be that sense in Arirang too of just like the continual walking and moving forward and the continual longing. And so I think maybe there's going to be a little bit of an abstractness. So that would be kind of interesting. And yeah, Javine, like a little bit more about identity. Because like with Map of the Soul 7, I feel like there was still like a beginning, a middle, and an end to Map of the Soul 7, and you do still kind of feel like Ego. When the album ends with Ego, there feels like, and I have arrived at the place where I can acknowledge my ego, the end, which makes sense because they kind of thought, at the time that they were going to have to stop to do their military service back then. So they were definitely considering Map of the Soul 7 as kind of like, what's the final message we want to deliver? And so it makes sense that there was kind of like a beginning, a middle, and an end point of that. And I'm wondering if Arirang will be a little bit less of like an end goal, let's get to the end of the story thing, and more of just like these are our feelings, this is who we are, this is what we're exploring as part of that ongoing process. Yes, Butterfly Young. I loved that description where they said that the album has the feel of a meal. I'm very curious too. I just, is it going to be something where we get to use their meal analogy? Are we going to get like a little bit of a sampling, like a little bit of a taste of everybody's thoughts and feelings and ideas? I'm so desperate for a track list. Like I can't even put into words how much I need to know the tracks, like what the tracks are called in this album. Hitchhiker Hobbit, we don't talk about the actual true last song in the album. It doesn't exist. It can't hurt us. Sonia, yes, I like that description of just like it's a continuous, like you build on it. And, like I said, all of those YouTubers who kind of were describing it as like, adding to the cultural heritage. I think that if they make this album very heavily based on identity, and that's really cool too, and I like the idea of them kind of returning to their roots as like, hey, we're Korean artists, this is our heritage, we're adding ourselves into the shared cultural heritage of our country and our communities, over these many, many centuries. So I think it would be very cool if we got like that sort of sense of like wandering identity and, It sounds weird to say both wandering and community because those two things are kind of different. You can't really wander and have a community, but if anybody can do it, BTS can do it and be wanderers and have a community everywhere they go and like have a global community. Yeah, Metaloop, I'm still kind of perplexed about the fact that we haven't really gotten anything for HYYH, because that's something that we were talking about a lot when I was doing my live streams themed to the BU and to the HYYH albums and things like that, and was the fact that we were told that we were going to get something, and I don't know if that just fell through or what, but it kind of seems like a big thing to just ignore when they specifically said that they were thinking about it, like that was something that PD Bang said, like, oh yeah, no, this is really important, and like this is a project that's been like in the works for a while, and I'm just like, that seems like a strange thing to abandon, you know what I mean? So I don't know if we're gonna get something separate, or Another reason why I'm so desperate for a track list, because obviously a track list just by itself wouldn't tell us very much, but we could at least theorize and we could at least start making connections, but we'll see. I honestly think that there's so much that they've already established for the BU, you know, aesthetic wise, theme wise, idea wise, that could just so nicely work with like the concepts that they have right now. And just then that's something that I didn't actually even get into today with Love Yourself, because I want to focus more on the albums and on the concept. But like I didn't even get into like the Love Yourself highlight reel or anything like that, because we've already talked about that in relation to the BU. But you know, so many eras have this as a great storytelling tool, and I mean, I could absolutely see it being used as a storytelling again. Butterfly Young, you are so right. If they give us some sort of like teaser, we're oh my gosh. Especially like, you know, thinking about the other members' teasers where you could like hear a little bit of like the song in the background, you know, so it's like, oh my gosh, if they give us some sort of teaser that teases music, we're all gonna go into a collective group meltdown and it'll be amazing. Yeah, that is probably true, Javine. We'll probably only get like birthday lives. They did kind of, I mean, like when they announced like, hey, we just announced the album concept. This is what it's gonna be. They came on and they did a live for us then, but it's just like it has been a little bit quiet since then. I'm sure they're practicing super, super, super hard, but um you know, we did kind of go from like feast to famine, because like there near the end of 2025 and then the beginning of 2026, it was like there was practically a live broadcast like every day. And then it's like we did kind of they tapered off a little bit, but you know, this the thing that they just did for Valentine's Day is kind of exciting. You know, it's kind of like getting our attention again. So you're right, I'm sure we'll at least see them for their birthdays. It is actually kind of difficult to believe that we are actually only like a month away from getting this album. Like it just, I don't even know where the time went. I just feel like it snuck up on me and I'm suddenly like, oh wow, we're here, we are in it. We're gonna be talking about a new album before we even know what hit us, and that is kind of wild to me. I don't know if I'm mentally prepared. Yes. Yes, you are so right. We all are like, I feel like we're at the top of a roller coaster together. We all just need to kind of hold hands and be like, okay, it's coming. I've already taken off from work that weekend, so I'm prepared. All of my coworkers understand that I will need time to recover. They are okay with it. They get me. So I'm off from work and I'm ready as best as I can be. I'm not ready, but I'll do my best. So, if for any of you who maybe came in a little bit later, I just want to go over my housekeeping with everybody one more time, because we had talked about this right at the beginning of the live stream. So, my next video is coming very soon. It's the last of my Welcome Home BTS series. It's going to be for Yoongi, exploring his August D persona, as well as the music that he makes with that identity. I'm not 100% sure when that's coming yet, because I still need to like make sure it passes copyright tests and all of that stuff. So I still have some work to do on it, but I'm hoping it'll be coming out this week. And then my next live stream, unless something changes, which of course I would let you guys know, but if if all goes well and all is as planned, my next live stream is going to be Sunday, March 1st. We were talking about this a little bit at the beginning of the stream, where I think that might, it's kind of funny, we were just talking about HYYH. I think that live stream on the 1st might be dedicated to talking about theories for the BU specifically, because we've talked a lot about the BU in past and talking about like the songs and the concept, but we haven't really gotten to deep dive into theories super much. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. Of course, as we get, right before the release of Arirang, we're going to talk about theories and what we're predicting coming up for the album itself. So we'll definitely do that as we get a little bit closer. But I thought as long as things haven't like dramatically, like if we get, a dramatic new shift in news, then maybe I'll reconsider. But as of right now, I'm thinking that live stream on the 1st, it would be fun to talk about some BU related theories. So that's the thought for that. And yeah, so that's kind of all I have for you today. Keep your eyes peeled for the next Welcome Home BTS video, and I hope to get that to you soon. And again, thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for celebrating my ARMY anniversary with me. And like I said, thank you for making it a very special time for me. You guys have been part of this journey for the past few years, and I really appreciate that. And all the support I've gotten has meant the world to me. It's made being an ARMY even more special to be able to like have a cool community with all of you. So thank you so much for everything. Anybody, if you had any final thoughts, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping it up for the day. You all are so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the amazing discussions. It was so fun and rewarding to be able to have those discussions with you about, love and self-love and those concepts. You all are awesome. I appreciate the participation and the thoughts so much. So thank you for being here. And for those of you who are on our Discord server, I will see you on Discord. And for those of you who are not, I will see you back here very soon with the next video. So, oh, that's really interesting, Metaloop. I hadn't heard of that tradition. That's really interesting. That sounds like something that I could see BTS doing. 14th of March would be right before Arirang comes out. So I could absolutely see that. That's really interesting. We'll be keeping our eyes peeled. The only Valentine's gifts that we want are from BTS. So we'll have to see what we might get something. It'll be really interesting. That's great, Javine. I love that. That's awesome. I just to reiterate, thank you all so much for sharing your personal feelings and your personal stories. I really, really love that. And Hitchhiker Hobbit, no, I don't actually know about that. You're welcome, Javine. I'm glad that we could keep you company while you were at the gym. That's awesome. I always love that everybody uses these live streams as like to keep them company while they're like, getting to or from work or while they're doing other tasks or taking a walk. I love that we can all like keep each other company like that. It's really fun. It's always such a fun way to spend our Sundays together. So thank you so much for spending part of your weekend with me. I agree, Butterfly Young. We had some great thoughts today, and if anybody who's watching this after the fact, like when it's up on the channel, please definitely have the live chat open because the chat here was amazing. Hitchhiker Hobbit, I'm obsessed with that. I love that. That is beautiful. April 14th. I'm going to put that on my calendar. That's delightful. It's Valentine's. Chef's kiss. I love it. I did not know that, but now I need to integrate that into my life. Thank you all so much for being here. To everybody who's heading out right now, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, everybody. And like I said, if you're on my Discord server, I'll see you over there. And if not, I'll see the rest of you all very soon in my next video and in the next live. I can't wait to keep catching up with all of you. So thank you for making my Army anniversary weekend a little extra special and for talking with me today. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching along. I really appreciate all of you being here. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.